In 2006, a four-star general who would later become Chief of Staff of the entire United States Air Force wrote an official investigation report about the death of a fighter pilot in Iraq. His conclusion was three words that no military report has ever contained before or since: excessive motivation to succeed. Major Troy Gilbert had pressed his F-16 attack run below a recoverable altitude because he could not stop caring about the 12 soldiers on the ground beneath him. He was the first F-16 Viper pilot to die in Operation Iraqi Freedom. His body was taken by the enemy. For 10 years, his 5 children grew up not knowing where their father was. The soldiers he saved spent a decade trying to bring him home.
This is the story of 40 minutes that cost everything and 10 years that followed. April 24th, 1980. The Iranian desert. 8 American servicemen are dead and 5 aircraft are destroyed, not because of enemy fire, not because of combat, because the helicopters sent to rescue 52 American hostages in Tehran broke down in the dark. Operation Eagle Claw, the mission to end the Iran hostage crisis, had collapsed before a single rescue attempt was made. The failure was catastrophic in every dimension. Strategically, it handed Iran a propaganda victory that still echoes today. Politically, it contributed directly to Jimmy Carter's defeat in the 1980 election. Militarily, it exposed a devastating gap at the heart of American special operations, the gap between what the mission required and what the available aircraft could actually do. The answer to that gap was the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, founded specifically to ensure that what happened at Desert 1, the failed Eagle Claw staging ground, would never happen again. Their standard was not excellence, their standard was perfection. Their motto was 3 words that defined an entire philosophy of warfare: death waits in the dark. And at the center of their arsenal was the most unlikely combat aircraft in the American military inventory, the AH-6 Little Bird. At first glance, it looked like something built for a children's television program, an egg-shaped fuselage just 32 feet long, a rotor disc barely 27 feet across, 8 feet tall, weighing less than a family car, costing less than a luxury apartment, no ejection seat, no radar, no stealth coating, no sophisticated targeting computer. By every conventional measure of modern military aviation, the Little Bird had no business being on a battlefield, but it could do something no other aircraft in the American inventory could do. It was small enough to weave between buildings at rooftop height, slow enough to engage targets at distances where jets would overshoot before they could fire, maneuverable enough to land in clearings no other helicopter could reach. In urban environments, it could hover silently in alleys, perch on rooftops, insert operators directly onto objectives in spaces a Black Hawk could never enter. Its operators called it the killer egg. Its enemies called it something considerably less affectionate. Chief Warrant Officer 5 David F. Cooper enlisted in the Army in 1985, 5 years after Eagle Claw. He flew Apaches in Desert Storm. Then he volunteered for the 161st SOAR, completed Green Platoon, the regiment's brutal qualification course, and transitioned to AH-6 light attack helicopters. Over the following years, he deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq 23 times. By November 2006, he had been awarded a Silver Star for combat action earlier that same year. He had no way of knowing that the afternoon of November 27th would be the worst and greatest 40 minutes of his life. On September 3rd, 2006, before he left for Iraq, Major Troy L. Gilbert gave each of his 5 children a small metal F-16 pin. Boston was 8, Grayson was 6, Isabella was 3, Aspen and Annalise, twins, were 6 months old. His wife, Ginger, stood in their Phoenix home, watching him leave. She told herself that 4.5 months was going to be the hardest stretch of their lives together. She had no idea what the future held. Troy Gilbert grew up in an Air Force family. He transferred to Texas Tech, quit ROTC, and graduated in 1993. Then, something happened that changes the lives of certain people and cannot be entirely explained. He missed the Air Force. He got himself into officer training school at Maxwell AFB, Alabama. He received a personnel assignment at RAF Lakenheath in England in January 1995, where a building is now named after him, and taught himself to fly by obtaining a private pilot's license in his spare time. He was offered a chance to begin pilot training early. He declined for a year because he felt he owed his new boss the time. When he finally got to pilot training, he graduated near the top of the Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training Program at Shepherd AFB in 2000. He chose the F-16 specifically because it could do both high-altitude and low-altitude missions. He wanted everything the jet could give him. At Aviano Air Base in Italy, he got his call sign, Trojan, a play on his first name. By the time he returned to Luke Air Force Base as an instructor in 2004, he was, by every account of those who flew with him, the kind of pilot who made time for every student and never considered any part of the job beneath him. His fellow pilot, Colonel David Shoemaker, said simply, "The way he lived is the way he died." In 2006, he volunteered to deploy to Iraq with his former commander, General Robin Rand, serving at Balad Air Base. While there, he logged more than 100 combat hours. Between missions, he volunteered at the base hospital, sweeping blood off floors, handing instruments to surgeons, sometimes simply holding the hands of wounded soldiers he had never met. His wife, Ginger, believes his time in that hospital shaped everything about what he did on November 27th. There was, she said, no job too menial, no life too ordinary to deserve his full attention. November 27th, 2006, 11:38 a.m. A Night Stalkers task force lifts off from Balad Air Base, heading north toward Lake Thar in the Iraqi desert. Their mission: intercept a high-value target at a building designated Objective Dominion Pine. The task force comprises two AH-6 Little Bird gunships, Valiant 41 and Valiant 42, two MH-6 lift helicopters carrying Special Operations soldiers, and two MH-60K Blackhawks carrying 9 assault troops each. At 12:05 p.m., the ground force commander determines the first Lager site is unsuitable, too close to civilian buildings. The task force lifts off to find a better location. In the next 5 minutes, everything changes. 12:10 p.m. The crew of Valiant 42 feels a violent shuddering through the tail of their aircraft. An RPG has struck the tail rotor. Catastrophic failure. The Little Bird begins to spin counterclockwise beneath its own rotors, a phenomenon called auto-rotation, when the stabilizing influence of the tail rotor is lost. The pilot brings it down in the only way possible. 4 revolutions, desert floor. The right skid tears off. The main rotor blades implode the plexiglass canopy. The aircraft comes to rest on its right side weapon system. Both pilots scramble out. Both are unhurt. The mission to hit Objective Dominion Pine is over. A new mission has just begun. 12:32 p.m. The Blackhawks depart to retrieve the downed aircraft recovery team, leaving Cooper in Valiant 41, 2 MH-6 lift helicopters, and 22 RSOF soldiers holding a perimeter around the crash site. Estimated recovery time, 30 minutes. Cooper keeps his AH-6 on the ground. His reasoning is precise and tactical. A single helicopter circling a crash site in daylight is what the 161st calls a Mooj magnet. Every armed insurgent within miles will converge on it. He waits. 12:50 p.m. ARSOF personnel on the eastern perimeter report vehicles approaching from the south. Initially, they appear to be Iraqi police. The misconception dissolves instantly when RPG and small arms fire begins raining in. 6 KIA Motors pickup trucks, the insurgents' weapon of choice, are driving to within 800 meters of the perimeter. 3 of them mount 12.7mm heavy machine guns. 20 insurgents in total. Cooper scrambles into Valiant 41 and joins the fight. The F-16s assigned as close air support, call signs Hellcat 55 and 56, are already overhead. Cooper tries to mark the farmhouse where fire is concentrating by shooting smoke rockets at it. It does not work. He says so himself. "We don't practice shooting from that far away because you can't hit them with rockets or miniguns." I'll be honest with you, it was not working. Hellcat 56 cannot visually identify the sand-colored building against the desert. Cooper runs out of ammunition. Cooper runs out of fuel. Valiant 41 returns to the crash site. At the crash site, under direct fire, the 4 MH6 lift helicopter pilots make a decision that will define this entire action. They remove a 300-pound fuel bladder and the remaining ammunition from the destroyed Valiant 42. They decant the fuel into small Z-bags. They do this standing upright. There is no way to do it prone, while RPGs and 12.7mm machine gun fire impacts around them. CW5 Cooper said afterward, "They knew I was going to need bullets. They were doing all this stuff under fire, and you can't do it in the prone. You have to be standing up." Without prompting, these guys got to work. Cooper refuels and rearms from the wreck of his sister aircraft, returns to the fight, runs out again, returns to the crash site a second time, refuels and rearms again, returns to the fight again. 1:15 p.m. Hellcat 56 drops a 500-pound bomb near the farmhouse. Enemy fire suppresses temporarily. Then Hellcat 55 returns from aerial refueling and begins strafing runs on the fleeing vehicles with its 20mm cannon. The tide is turning. Troy Gilbert was already airborne when the call came. He and his wingman were redirected from their original mission to provide close air support over the crash site. His wingman dropped a GBU-12 guided bomb on the farmhouse and left to refuel. Gilbert stayed. Working alone with a joint terminal attack controller on the ground, Gilbert searched for 3 trucks that had fled the farmhouse. The communication between them was described in the crash investigation report as challenging and prolonged. The reason was straightforward. There were civilians in the area. Gilbert had spent months in the base hospital watching the cost of the wrong decision. He was not going to make it. He didn't want to harm civilians, Ginger Gilbert said later. He'd seen the devastating effects. He certainly wasn't going to harm our guys. After several minutes, he located 2 armed trucks. He rolled in for the first strafing run with his 20mm cannon. Successful. He recovered at only 200 feet above the desert floor. Dangerously low, but within limits. The lead vehicle was damaged. He came back for the second truck. The crash investigation report, written by then Brigadier General David Goldfein, who would later serve as the 21st Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, concluded the following. While engaged in a dynamic environment with friendly forces under attack, Gilbert was at all times keenly focused on the well-being of both coalition ground personnel and Iraqi non-combatants. Tragically, his channelized attention, excessive motivation to succeed, and target fixation caused him to press his attack below a recoverable altitude. The F-16 did not pull out. It crashed 6 miles from the landing zone. Major Troy Gilbert did not eject. He died on impact. His fellow pilots were not surprised. Colonel David Shoemaker, who had flown with Gilbert at Aviation, said, "The way he lived is the way he died. That integrity and excellence showed in his last act." On the ground below, the Army major commanding the ground element watched the attack collapse the insurgents' formation. In a letter written 2 days later to Ginger Gilbert, he described what Troy's final run had done. "We would most certainly have sustained heavy casualties. Troy, however, stopped that from happening. His amazing display of bravery and tenacity immediately broke up the enemy formations and caused them to flee in panic. My men and I will never forget the ultimate sacrifice your husband made. We will always be in his debt." At 7:15 p.m., under cover of darkness, Valiant 42 was sling-loaded beneath an MH-60 Black Hawk and returned to Balad. The Night Stalkers had kept their promise. The aircraft came home. Not a single American soldier on the ground had been killed. Troy Gilbert had not come home. CW5 David Cooper received the Distinguished Service Cross in 2008, the second highest military honor in the United States Army. He was the first Night Stalker in the regiment's history to receive it. He became the 161st Command Chief Warrant Officer in 2007 and retired in 2012 after 27 years of service. He deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq 23 times. He never lost an aircraft that he was flying. The AH-6 Little Bird, the killer egg, born from the ashes of Eagle Claw 1980, is still flying, still deploying with the Night Stalkers, still doing the things no other aircraft can do. It weighs less than a family car and carries no ejection seat and has no radar. It remains the most unlikely and most lethal instrument in American Special Operations aviation. Troy Gilbert is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. A building at Maxwell Air Force Base is named after him. A memorial bridge at Luke Air Force Base carries his name. At the 56th Fighter Wing, where he served as an instructor, his former students still fly. He left 5 children F-16 pins. They were too young to understand what those pins meant on the morning he walked out the door. They are old enough now. The official crash investigation report said that Major Troy L. Gilbert died because of channelized attention, excessive motivation to succeed, and target fixation. The investigation was correct. In 40 years of military aviation history, no official document has ever produced a more precise or more devastating tribute to what it means to be a soldier. He cared too much. That is the whole story. That was always the whole story.